when people are out there on Twitter like, oh, get rid of Royce and get rid of this and get rid of that. Okay, what are you going to get to replace it? Because you have no way. You have to go back to the vet minimum guys. Like that's your only pool to play with right now if you're going to try and go into free agency. So you are absolutely, your hands are tied.
This is in session. We wrote things down this time so that if you're a visual learner, it'll help it stick, because I can tell you based on my social, which is not even near the level of yours, Gerald, that people are still a little confused by this, which is, I get it. There's a lot to it. So let's look at some of the limitations the Suns are up against.
Yeah. So,
cool, buddy.
So looking ahead to this upcoming summer, because the Suns are a second tax apron team as of when their season ended, these are the limitations in place against them. They cannot aggregate multiple players in a trade, which means they can't combine two outgoing players to match the salary of a different player. They can send out one player and receive multiple players in return, but they cannot send multiple players out combined as part of any trade. They can't take on additional money in any trade. The rule is usually you get up to 110% of the salary you are bringing back. Now the Suns cannot take on an additional dollar compared to what they're sending out. So it has to be 100% of what they're sending out or less in any trade. They cannot use a pre-existing trade exceptions. If they make a trade and create a trade exception, they will be able to use that in the future, but they cannot use, for example, the campaign trade exception that they made last summer. They cannot use the mid-level exception or any of those other exceptions like the biannual, the room exception, those types of things to sign free agents. So that basically restricts them to just vet minimums in free agency that they can offer guys because they are already over the cap. They cannot acquire any player in a sign and trade. They cannot sign players on the buyout market if that player's salary before being bought out was greater than the mid-level exception. So a lot of tools are no longer at their disposal that usually teams in this tier of spending can use to improve their roster. They're basically limited to very strict trade regulations where they're mostly doing one-for-one deals. We're trading one guy to bring in multiple players. And free agency, it's vet minimums.
So let me explain this. I'll encapsulate it in one way. Basically, the Cliff Notes version of what Gerald just said. You screwed while building a roster at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to get creative.
You have to get very creative.
You got to get creative. And this is also why things like the Grayson Allen signing and, you know, we'll talk about Royce O'Neal getting signed hopefully in the near future are so valuable for this team. Because you can actually offer them a little bit more money where a lot of other guys you cannot. We'll get into that tomorrow, the Grayson and Royce thing.
It's also why, like, when people are out there on Twitter like, oh, get rid of Royce and get rid of this and get rid of that. Okay, what are you going to get to replace it? Because you have no way. You have to go back to the vet minimum guys. Like that's your only pool to play with right now if you're going to try and go into free agency. So you are absolutely, your hands are tied. Yeah. Like you have no options. Like you have to take care of what you have right now, and you got to hope that you're able to, you know, either move a asset in order to get one or two back that are going to help you, or you got to pray that you hit it again, you know, or that you hit it in the free agent market at the vet minimum level, because other than that, you have no options. You have zero options.